So Virginia, you have written extensively about glamour, but is there a way to sort of, in a nutshell, kind of explain what that idea is, what idea you're trying to get at?
Right. So I'm trying to get people to think about glamour not as a style, but as a form of persuasion. Nonverbal persuasion, it's mostly about images that may be literal photographs or they may be in our minds, but you see something glamorous and it makes you feel, if only life could be like that, if only I could live in that world, drive that car, have that dress, be with that person. And this applies to politics because a lot of what politics is about is if only I could live in that world.
How? Because the idea will obviously, like when you talk about politics, I think there are a few obvious sort of candidates that come up. Obama in the States, Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, and his father here. But does that glamour apply to a lot of politicians, and most politicians even? Like I think of even Mitt Romney or George W. Bush had a certain kind of glamour.
No. Most in democracies, politicians tend not to be glamorous. They may be charismatic. They're often better than average looking, but they're not glamorous because glamour requires mystery. You always have to have mystery to have glamour, and we generally in democracies don't like our politicians to be especially mysterious. We want to know everything about their health, their finances, every gaffe they've ever made, and so it's very hard to sustain glamour as a politician.
So what would be the mystery of Obama then? Like, how does that, what kind of sets him apart from others?
So Obama in the United States, I can't say maybe it's still in the world. In the United States, I would say Obama is no longer glamorous.
Right.
He was intensely glamorous in 2008. His supporters projected onto him everything they wanted in a country, in a world, in a president, of course. And he was able to be mysterious because, first of all, he was a relative newcomer. He'd been in the Senate, but not for a long time, and he wasn't from a famous political family. And he had this an exotic background. He was biracial. He grew up in Hawaii. Very different from ordinary American life, even ordinary African American life. And that was actually his wife, Michelle, was very important in that original 2008 campaign to sort of ground him. She's very stylish, but she is like a regular person, right. Sort of a scaled up version of a regular person. So he was glamorous and she was sort of the girl next door, so to speak.
So is it, how much of it is asking voters to think about ideals and to think about sort of an idealized version of what kind of a leader they want? Like, is it, in addition to the mystery, right. Are people aiming for like sort of like the movie star right, president?
Yeah. Well, glamour is always about ideals. Glamour starts with the audience's sense of discontent and promises them a different, better life in different, better circumstances. And that can be anything from, if I could only be on the red carpet, or winning an Oscar, wouldn't that be great, to you vote for this person and you live in the ideal world. So in the political realm, more than politicians, glamour comes in, sometimes in the way policies are described. They'll sort of magically solve problems, and glamour always hides things, and hides the difficulties. And often in your ideal of perhaps of the leader, but even more of the country. Ronald Reagan was very successful as an American politician, partly because he was a movie star and he was graceful, physically graceful, and he always hit his mark. But a lot of it had to do with the way he described the country. And he could say, the city on a hill, and that resonated with people. That was the country they wanted to be, and that was a lot of Obama's support in 2008. And you see in the two generations of Trudeau's different ideals being represented, different ideals of a person and also of the country.
So it isn't just a liberal. Glamour isn't just a liberal idea. Because conservatives, I think, would say to themselves, well, we don't have the sort of glamorous, superficial sort of leaders that other parties have, but Ronald Reagan was a glamorous guy.
Right. No. Everybody thinks that glamour is for the other people,
right.
Because glamour has an illusion at its core. There's always something. It's an illusion that tells certain truths, but there's always an illusion. So, you are always tough-minded and the other people fall for the glamour. So men think that only women fall for glamour, and liberals think only conservatives, and conservatives think only liberals.
Right.
But it's a universal phenomenon, the same way humor is a universal phenomenon. It just takes different forms for different people, and in the political realm, different politicians or policies.
So if you're a voter and you're trying to understand politics and politicians, and you're trying to be conscious of glamour, is it something you should fear? Is it something you should be conscious of? Is there any positive aspect to it?
Well, glamour, I'll say something general for glamour in our lives, and it applies to politics, which is glamour is very good at revealing what we want, and it's often very good at pointing us in a good direction, which it's often people are drawn to careers because they have a glamorous vision of the career. Well, if they're going to actually pursue the career, they're going to learn all the unglamorous parts. So what I always say is that glamour can only be a guide. It's not the destination. You have to, if you're thinking about actually acting on glamour as opposed to just having a moment of enjoyable contemplation, you have to think about what's left out. What are the costs? What are the difficulties? What could go wrong? What are the things that I'm not thinking about? And that's as true in politics as it is in deciding where to go to college, or who to marry, or whether to buy that dress or that sports car.
So it's almost, you have to bring a certain skepticism, I guess, to it, basically.
You have to bring a very particular kind of skepticism, which is not just to say, oh, it's bad and it can't tell me anything real, but to say, okay, I like that picture, I like that idea, but what's being left out of the picture? And in the political realm, that's often, okay, well, we're going to pass this regulation. It's going to have these positive effects. Well, what are the negative side effects going to be? Or we're going to go to war, and we're going to solve this problem. We'll confront this enemy. Well, what are the different ways that could go wrong? And do we have an exit strategy? And all of those kinds of things that actual, let's say, generals would have to think about, but maybe the general public doesn't.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
Great. Thanks.